I apologize for not showing up earlier, but I was listed at 1:05, and so I thought I'd show up around that time.
Absolutely.
And I know that nobody up here has anything to do with that. So I'm afraid that I may bore you by repeating some of the things that have been said, but since I wasn't here at the beginning, I don't know that they have been said. So I approach it with the same enthusiasm I had as I was preparing for this. My task is to answer the question, what is peer review? I plan to offer some definitions, present a brief historical background, express some thoughts on responsibilities of the reviewer, as well as point out some challenges and risks of the peer review system as we know it. Now, one broad definition of peer review goes like this. It is the evaluation of creative work or performance by other people in the same field. It is a concept that provides a basis for determining and rewarding excellence, as well as the opportunity for punishing those who fail to excel, and so it is used in academia for evaluations with regard to publications, research grants, tenure, compensation, and, alternatively, disciplinary action. My remarks in these few minutes will, however, be limited to medical writing. And in that regard, peer review is the process by which experts assess the quality of manuscripts submitted for publication in scientific journals. As with the broad definition, peer review in the medical journal arena suggests prestige, indicates selectivity, and connotes sanction. But has it always been that way? What are its origins? While Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in 1450 allowed distribution of what was prepared for public consumption, review of articles submitted for journal publication did not actually occur until 1731. In that year, the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and 2 decades later, the Royal Society of London, which edited the highly regarded Philosophical Transactions, established a protocol in which papers submitted to the editors were reviewed by a select group of the Society's members, who then advised the editor on whether submissions merited publication. However, for the next 100 years or so, there was more available journal space, frankly, than there were articles submitted. Proceedings of society meetings and solicited reviews often fill the pages of medical journals. It was not until the 20th century, with increasing medical specialization and diversity, that truly outside reviewers, that is, outside the select members of select societies, were employed, and that the process for accepting manuscripts became more competitive. For publications such as the Journal of the American Medical Association, that was in approximately 1940. Reviewers, or referees as they are sometimes called, are usually anonymous, not selected by the author in efforts to avoid bias and cronyism. Although with new and super-specialized fields, the editor may sometimes need to consult authors for names of potential reviewers. In fact, I can tell you from first-hand knowledge that the recruiting of reviewers is one of the hardest jobs of an editor. In a field such as minimal access surgery, where new knowledge is advanced and innovative procedures introduced at a rapid pace, the challenges faced by an editor can be substantial. When I was editor-in-chief of our journal, Surgical Endoscopy, when fetoscopic surgery was introduced by Harrison and his group in San Francisco, imagine my efforts in finding reviewers for their manuscripts when they were the only act in town. What about the responsibilities of the peer review system? Ideally, it should achieve fair evaluation of the author's work, give sound evidence-based advice to the editor, and serve as reassurance to the reader that before publication, the work has undergone careful scrutiny by individuals qualified to do so. Adequate peer review is therefore responsible to the author, the editor and the reader. Should peer review avoid conflict of interest? I think it inherently cannot, because the more involved the reviewer is with the subject and up to date on its evolution, the more qualified she or he tends to be as a referee. Reviewers are chosen for their knowledge not only of the field, but as much as possible for their familiarity with the topic, which is the subject of the manuscript. Often forgotten, however, is that peer review is primarily concerned with acceptability and not validity. The referee has to deal with the information presented by the author and does not usually have the luxury of verifying data. Peer review should meet the criteria of innovation and relevance. Conclusions should be supported by data. The manuscript and the title should not be misleading. Remember, the peer reviewer advises but does not decide. That is the responsibility of the editor. This explains to some extent why multiple reviewers are desirable, since multiple perspectives may be necessary before the editor can decide. Reviewers have to sacrifice time and are not compensated. They have to timely fashion if the process is to be efficient. Fortunately, most reviewers are authors themselves and therefore have a personal stake in the satisfactory operation of the process. They should be available, thorough, prompt, able to suppress bias, committed to offer written, constructive criticism, and answer questions posed by the editor. Fortunately, the peer review process does continue to some extent through invited commentaries and letters to the editor. But there are challenges and some controversies concerning the peer review process. The harshest critics would have us believe, like Richard Horton of The Lancet, that peer review is, quote, biased, unjust, unaccountable, incomplete, easily fixed, often insulting, usually ignorant, occasionally foolish, and frequently wrong, end quote. Many authors, perhaps some of you in this room, who have had rejected manuscripts would, of course, agree. Contrariwise, Arnold Relman, former editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, has stated that peer review minimizes the hype, exaggeration, and biases, and prevents dissemination of premature and unwarranted conclusions, end quote. I would be remiss if I did not point out that although this subject deals with scientific material, there are so far no definitive outcome studies on the process. I have to agree that there are time delays, problems with recruitment of reviewers, issues of professional jealousy and political differences. Anonymity may be a false assumption. Some reviewers are poor performers because they're cursory, negative without reason, positive without substance, or misdirected by focusing on the author's body of work or personality rather than the manuscript at issue. However, despite these challenges and risks, it is comforting for us readers to know that some subset of science has been critically examined so that, were we to use it in our own thinking or for our own work, we would be less likely to have wasted our time. Thank you.